You have been lied to about intermittent fasting because it does not magically burn more fat. It does not boost your metabolism, and it does not work for the reasons most people think it does. But it can work extremely well if you just understand what it actually does. So before we get into today's topic, I have coached hundreds of busy men who've dropped 30 all the way up to 50 pounds. Now, some of them did use the intermittent fasting approach, whereas many of them actually didn't. Now, by the end of this video, you know exactly what intermittent fasting actually does, what it doesn't do, and whether you should be using it at all. We'll break down the science, the biggest myths, some real client examples, and how to know if fasting fits within your lifestyle. Now, let's talk about what intermittent fasting actually does to your body. Let's get straight into this. Intermittent fasting is not a fat loss mechanism. It is a behavioral tool because fasting helps people lose fat for only one specific reason. It makes it easier to eat fewer calories. That is it, period. Because when calories are matched, studies consistently show that no fat loss advantage comes from intermittent fasting compared to eating on a normal schedule. Same calories, same protein, same fat loss. The benefit from intermittent fasting comes from simply eating less and not from skipping breakfast. Because let's say you eat as soon as you wake up, 8 a.m., and you have your last meal at 8 p.m. That gives you a 12-hour feeding window. So you basically have 12 hours of opportunity to eat your meals, right? That's how most people do it. Now, if we were to compare that to intermittent fasting, which simply all that really does, it reduces your feeding window. So now instead of eating your first meal at 8 a.m. and your last meal at 8 p.m., you're going to shrink that time window from maybe instead of breaking your fast at 8 a.m., maybe you break your fast now at 10 a.m. or 12 p.m. or 2 p.m. or 4 p.m., right? So it's like the longer you delay your fast, the smaller you shrink this time feeding window. And as you can tell, there's a huge difference between a large feeding window and a smaller feeding window. And the reason why that difference can help so many people drop body fat is because just by looking at my hands, it's like, well, what is easier for you to eat more calories? Having more hours throughout the day to do that or less hours in the day to do that? It's pretty simple. The less hours you have during the day to eat food, the less likely you are to overeat. And the more likely you are to undereat, AKA be in a calorie deficit. And in order to lose body fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit. So a lot of people enjoy intermittent fasting, and we'll talk about some other benefits that could potentially have apart from weight loss. But a lot of people like this behavioral way of eating because it just makes it a lot harder to overeat. Whereas if you give yourself unlimited shots, unlimited chances of eating, I mean, yeah, the floodgates are open. You can eat whatever you want, whenever you want. So it is a tool in the toolbox and it is not required. So let's touch on some of the biggest myths about intermittent fasting. Myth number one, fasting burns more fats magically because science. No. Fat loss comes from a calorie deficit over a consistent period of time and not from a fasting window, because multiple randomized controlled trials show that no difference in fat loss when calories are equated. Like, I really want you guys to just pay attention to this. Calories are king. Calories will determine everything. They will determine your future, whether you gain weight, maintain your weight, or lose weight. Calories will determine this, and not when you eat those calories. And while I'm at it, let me bust this myth as well. Eating at certain times, a lot of people are scared to eat certain foods at certain times. Oh, carbs past 6 p.m. make you fat. Again, complete nonsense. Your body doesn't care. Your body doesn't know. It only cares about what you give it throughout the day, throughout the weeks, throughout the months. And if you consistently, throughout days, weeks, and months, eat less calories than you burn, despite eating carbs past 6 p.m., past 8 p.m., at nighttime, it doesn't care. It'll still lose body fat. So get that out of the window. Like just completely, just don't even think about that. Carbs at a certain time don't make you fat. Any food for that matter does not make you fat. Too much of any food makes you fat. That is the root cause of weight gain, of obesity. People just love eating. And especially nowadays, we got fast food, we got junk food, we got hyper palatable processed foods, companies trying to steal your attention. Like it has never been easier to be fat nowadays. It's never been easier, right? Like compared to 100 years ago, we didn't even have access to fast food restaurants. We didn't have access to Uber Eats. We didn't have access to all these just instant gratifying things. We're literally a tap away from ordering a pizza. I mean, how cool is that? But then at the same time, how dangerous is that? Like, yes, it's super convenient and you can definitely use it towards your advantage if you wanted to. You can order a healthy meal prep, one tap away. But at the same time, you're also one tap away from ordering a Domino's pizza. Gotta make the choice depending on what your goals are. Let's move on to myth number 2. Fasting boosts your metabolism. Your metabolism is driven by body mass, muscle mass, and total energy intake. Now, extended deficits slow metabolism, whether you fast or you don't fast. So once again, fasting has nothing to do with this. Myth number 3, fasting balances hormones automatically. Now, your hormones improve because body fat decreases and insulin sensitivity improves and inflammation drops. That happens with any effective fat loss method. Once again, whether you're fasted or not fasted, all of these effects of better hormones, better testosterone, better insulin sensitivity, lower inflammation. If you notice these things while intermittent fasting, it is not because you are intermittent fasting. I hate to break it to you, but it is because you have used intermittent fasting as a tool to put you in a deficit. And that calorie deficit has allowed you to improve your hormones, improve your insulin sensitivity, and drop your inflammation. That is what caused it. But you used intermittent fasting as a tool to get you there, right? There are numerous tools that you can use in a toolbox to get you to a certain destination, right? So let's say the destination is to get you to a calorie deficit. Well, what is the most preferred way to get there? What is the best way to get there? What is the easiest way to get there? That answer could differ person to person. I know numerous people who love intermittent fasting. They swear by it. They love it. It fits within their lifestyle. It's great. Okay, awesome. Keep doing your thing. Whereas I know even more people who hate it, who cannot stand it, but are still successful on their fat loss, on their weight loss journey. Why? Because they still keep that calorie deficit in mind. That is the key right there. So what intermittent fasting is actually good for. We busted some myths. I know I've kind of like punched it in the face a couple of times, and some people who are just religious with this way of eating may be a bit offended right now. But let me touch on some beneficial things that it could do outside of obviously getting you in a calorie deficit. So number 1, it can help with appetite control. So especially if you notice that you're not a huge breakfast eater. So I myself, for the longest time, ever since I could remember, I have never been a huge breakfast eater. I don't even really like breakfast foods. Like a lot of people like fantasize over eating IHOP, eating a big stack of pancakes first thing in the morning, or waffles or French toast. And I'm like, no thanks. Like as soon as I wake up, I'm like, I'm still trying to get up. Like I'm ready to attack the day, and I want to get my workout in. I want to do my cardio. I just want to wake up and just like start moving right away. And the last thing I want to do is wake up and stuff myself with a big stack of pancakes, or just honestly anything for that matter, even like a bowl of cereal or a bowl of oatmeal, even like a healthier breakfast. Like, no, it'll kind of weigh me down. I'll feel a bit lethargic. I'll feel a bit groggy, and I'd rather just do something in a fasted state. It just mentally, I feel better. Physically, I actually feel better. And I just think my body is so used to that way of just living, of that morning routine where it adapts, and your body can very easily adapt. I guarantee you as well that if I force myself to eat breakfast for maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, depending on how long it takes, my body will get used to that. And over time, naturally, I can turn myself into a breakfast eating person. I know I can. The same way I try myself to do the opposite of not being hungry in the morning, because I do remember as a kid growing up, I would eat a sugary bowl of cereal first thing in the morning. I would, right? And I'd actually look forward to it every single morning. I get my instant spike of dopamine, my instant spike of blood sugar, and I'd feel super hyper energized. But then by 10 a.m., come recess time, I would just hit this wall and I will just completely, I'd plummet basically. And I'd have another high sugar snack, but yeah, that's a discussion for a different video. But just know that you can definitely train your taste buds and train your appetites, hormones, signals, whatever you want to call it, to eat based on when you want to eat. So right now, you're not a huge breakfast eater and you want to keep it that way, cool. But if you are a huge breakfast eater and you maybe don't want to do that anymore, you can certainly train yourself to do that. Now, is it required? No, absolutely not. But just know that the option is there if you want to. The second thing intermittent fasting helps with is fewer meals to think about. Because logically speaking, if you have a 12-hour feeding window, you got to think about obviously your breakfast, you got to think about your snacks, your lunch, another snack, dinner, and then maybe a dessert. That's like what? 5, 6, 7 meals that you got to think about. Whereas intermittent fasting, if you only have an 8-hour feeding window, for example, you only really got to think about 2, 3 meals max. Because realistically speaking, how many meals can you actually cram in to this small 8-hour feeding window? Like you likely cannot cram in 7 meals in that eating window, unless they're like 7 small little snacks. But then it kind of defeats the purpose, right? A lot of people enjoy intermittent fasting because it's just fewer meals to think about. You don't have to meal prep 7 different meals. You just have to meal prep 2 larger meals. And especially if you're someone like myself who enjoys eating larger meals in a shorter time span, it could certainly be beneficial for you. It'll just cause you to think less about food. It'll cause you to prep less food, or at least less quantities of meals. So that could be very beneficial. Thirdly, it is easier to calorie control for busy schedules. If you are working full-time, if you work a desk job and you're running errands and you're constantly on the go, having to bring Tupperware containers with you of chicken, broccoli, and rice, or just having to plan out your meals in advance can be difficult, right? Whereas if you're constantly running errands and you're constantly on the go, knowing that you just don't have to worry about eating during that time can just cause you a lot of less brain stress or brain power, or just like thinking power, decision fatigue, because now you can just solely focus on your job and the task at hand. And you don't have to think about your next meal or what food to eat, because you know you're in your fasted state, in your fasted window. So you can just literally focus on whatever you're doing at the moment. So that could be super beneficial. And then also it reduces the likelihood of you snacking and grazing. Once again, if you have a 12-hour feeding window, it gives you 12 hours of opportunities to not only eat meals, but then also snack, graze all throughout the day. Whereas if you just literally tell yourself that, hey, I'm in a fasted state right now, I'm in my fasting state and I cannot have any food at this moment, it can stop you from snacking. So if you're prone to snacking, to grazing at the office, at home, and for those of you who do not know, snacking can single-handedly push you out of a calorie deficit, because a lot of people will snack throughout the day and they won't even keep track of the snacks. They'll have a handful of chips here and there. They'll have a handful of nuts here and there. They'll grab a bite to eat here and there. Small licks, bites, snacks, all these small little things. The danger is because they're so small, where you're like, oh, this was only a small little thing. It won't really do much, but they can add up so quickly, just like liquid calories can. You don't really think much about when you drink something that like, oh, I gotta keep track of this. But if you have numerous liquid calories throughout the day, juices, sodas, all these things, it could easily add hundreds of extra calories throughout the day and easily put you out of a deficit and into a calorie surplus. And so if you right now think that you're in a calorie deficit, but you're not losing any weight, I would look at your eating habits. Are you snacking? If so, how much are you snacking? What are you snacking on? Now, I'm not against snacking. Like if you enjoy snacking, if you insist on snacking, sure, like snack, but just keep track of it. And then also you can make the snacks a bit lower in calorie. So instead of grabbing a handful of nuts, which yes, are healthy, but they're very calorically dense, Swap that for maybe a handful of dried edamame, for example. I used to have that all the time, and it's same great texture. You get that crunchy texture. They're nice and salty, good source of protein, and a lot lower in calories compared to mixed nuts. Or maybe some rice cakes, or maybe just an apple, a piece of fruit, a couple of blueberries, just something lower in calories. So once again, snacking is not inherently bad, but if you don't keep track of it and they're high in calories, it could be bad, right? It's all about context here. So that is why, given the reasons that I just listed out, intermittent fasting can work for some people. Not because it is superior, because it can just be simpler. It's a more simpler approach to eating. Now, here is who intermittent fasting can be beneficial for. Intermittent fasting works well for people who are busy during the day and don't want to be constantly thinking about food, about prepping every single meal, or to people who naturally skip breakfast anyway, or to people who overeat late at night, or to people who prefer eating fewer meals, just like myself, or who simply just want simplicity over precision. Those are some examples of people who can benefit from intermittent fasting. So I just want to highlight this client example here. So several of my executive clients have lost all the way up to 30 pounds simply by skipping breakfast, eating 2 structured meals, and hitting protein. They didn't do anything magical. They were just very consistent with that. Because once again, the less meals you eat, the likelihood of you eating less calories as well is just going to be a lot higher. Whereas the more meals you eat, the larger your eating window is, the more likely it is for you to overeat. Once again, more likely. Not a specific rule. It's not like, oh, like just because your eating window is larger means that you are going to be overeating low, but it just can be easier to do that, right? So given that, here's who intermittent fasting is not for, because I've definitely seen a lot of people tried doing this way of eating and it just completely slaps them in the face. So this is a bad idea if you either train hard in the morning, because ideally after a hard morning workout, you want to be eating something right after that workout. Training fasted first thing in the morning is fine, especially if you have a bigger meal the night before, because you'll still have most of the calories in your system, most of the glucose will still be there to push you through your workout. So training fasted, totally cool. Whether it's a cardio workout or even a weight training workout, totally cool. But as soon as you're done with that session, first thing in the morning, ideally, you'd like to speed up the recovery process by eating something right away. It doesn't have to be a huge meal, just something light. It could be a protein shake, a protein bar, a piece of fruits, just something quick and easy, just to speed up the recovery process. And then also you don't want to be in this catabolic states post-workout and just not eat anything hours after training in a fasted state. It's just not ideal. Secondly, if you struggle with binge eating, this is really, really common with a lot of people who try intermittent fasting, but it just completely goes the other way, where they feel they're really disciplined in the morning. They'll skip their breakfast, they'll break their fast at noon, 2 p.m. But then as soon as nighttime comes around, they come home from a busy day at work, they open up the kitchen, or not the kitchen, they open up the fridge, they open up the pantry, and they just stuff themselves with anything and everything that I can see. Leftovers, snacks, dinners, they just completely go all out because they've deprived themselves for so long. And they're like, oh my God, I am so hungry. And they just lack this self-control where as soon as they open up the floodgates, as soon as their timer goes off on their phone and say, hey, your fasting is done, you can eat now, they take that literally and they're like, okay, we can eat now. I'm going to eat now. And they just completely go balls to the walls and they just eat everything in sight. And that can definitely cause you to binge eat and overeat and then actually go back into a calorie surplus again, pretty much defeating the entire purpose of you being in a fasted state for so long. You literally suffered for no reason, especially if you have a hard time just keeping your hunger at bay while you're fasting. It sucks being hungry. You are kind of suffering by not eating. And if you are then going to binge afterwards, you are completely just ruining the entire benefits intermittent fasting gave you to begin with. So that is who it is also not for, people who are prone to binge eating. Thirdly is people who use fasting as punishments. A lot of people do this as well, where they'll have a cheat day, a cheat meal, whatever. And then the following morning, they feel slightly more bloated. And then they'll skip all of their meals until later on in the evening. And it really promotes this yo-yo binge cycle effect where you cheat on your diet, you restrict yourself. And then by restricting yourself, you feel the urge to binge on your diet again. And then after you binge on your diet, you feel guilty, you restrict yourself. And then you binge, restrict, binge, restrict, binge, restrict. And it's like you're constantly in this never-ending loop. And it just keeps on going in this vicious cycle. And it's not until you break that cycle by maybe eating regular meals spread out evenly throughout the day. If that works for you, just stick to that. And then also not punishing yourself after eating a slightly higher calorie meal, after eating a cheat meal, because that's where so many people go wrong. They'll feel bad about themselves, they'll punish themselves, and then it just leads you to be in an even worse state than when you started. Fourthly, people who cannot control food once the window opens. I talked about this already, but as soon as the floodgates open, a lot of people have this all or nothing mindset where they just go completely, I got to eat everything in sight, when you should not be doing that. Generally, a general rule of thumb, whenever you break your fast, whether it's first thing in the morning or after a couple hours of waking, break your fast with a high protein meal. This will help regulate your hunger. It'll keep you satiated, and you won't feel the urge to really overeat either. Like if you break your fast with some eggs, steak, or some chicken, or some Greek yogurt, or some protein oatmeal, like you feel good. You feel satisfied. You feel content. Like you feel like you're not gonna, I haven't heard anyone tell me that they binge ate chicken breast or that they binge ate protein oatmeal. Like it just doesn't happen. Whereas most people, they binge eat on the hyperpalatable foods, the pancakes, the waffles, the French toast, all these things. So do not break your fast with the sugary foods, with the cereals. Break your fast with a hearty, satiating, high protein meal. Add some fruit, add some veggies, add some fiber, drink some water as well. That is how you break your fast. And that is how you should really be eating every single meal. And then lastly, this is not for someone who feels weak, irritable, or unfocused while they're in a fasted state. Like if you try intermittent fasting and you go to work and you're just a nightmare to be around, you're constantly just like irritable, people don't like talking to you at work, you feel weak, you cannot focus well on your task at hand, then don't do it. Like, please, like don't intermittent fast, like eat a snack, eat something. Because like, yeah, your brain does require energy in the form of glucose, in the form of carbohydrates to like properly think. And if you are just not able to think straight at work when you literally are getting paid to do a job, like you should fuel for that. Just like you should fuel for your workouts. You should fuel for your performance at work. And if you go into work in a fasted state and you are underperforming and you feel irritable and weak, you should probably eat something or else you'll get fired. And if you get fired, none of this really works because everything that I'm talking about here, like, yeah, implies that obviously you have work, you have a career, you are able to make money and just have a living, right? Because without that, that's like you got other issues to solve, right? So yeah, I know is obviously pretty obvious, but yeah, just had to put that out there. Now, based on my personal experience, I have definitely used intermittent fasting. If you guys have been watching my videos before, I definitely use intermittent fasting and I use it during specific phases or seasons of my life. I did it during my last bodybuilding prep. Sometimes I'll do it in the off season as well. It can definitely work short term for most people, but for performance and muscle growth, it can often be inferior. But I personally enjoy intermittent fasting, but just given the schedule that I have right now, the lifestyle, everything that I do right now, given my activity level too, like I'm working out 6 days a week, I'm getting 20,000 steps in, I'm running 5 to 6 days a week as well. I'm constantly running marathons. I'm constantly doing high rocks competitions. Like my body burns a lot of calories. It needs a lot of fuel. And by me intermittent fasting, it just hinders my performance. It hinders my recovery and it just hinders everything. So I eat in a pretty normal feeding window. I break my fast at around 10 a.m. and I'll have my last meal at around 6 p.m. So it is still a relatively small feeding window, around 8 hours. And I've actually noticed for myself as well that almost doing the opposite of intermittent fasting. So like the reverse intermittent fasting, because a lot of people will think of intermittent fasting and they'll think right away of like skipping breakfast. But I actually think that if you do it in the reverse order and actually eat your meal earlier on in the day and then have your last meal earlier on in the evening, can actually be a lot more beneficial, and is actually highly talked about by a lot of just like scientists, doctors, longevity experts, because the way most people recommend intermittent fasting is to obviously delay your breakfast, have your first meal at 12 and your last meal at 8 p.m., for example. If you have a huge meal right before bed, your body is still digesting the food, and that can have a huge negative impact on your sleep. And I definitely did it this way when I first got started. I did this a couple of times unintentionally during high school, where unintentionally I would skip my breakfast, and then I'd have a long day of school, then I go to soccer practice, and then I go to work, and I just wasn't able to eat all my meals during a regular time basis. Then I'd have to cram all these calories down at the end of the day. And I just remembered so often I would have to like cram all these calories in, and I would just be so bloated. I'd feel like absolute trash. And I tried going to sleep in that state where I would lay down, and keep in mind, I was still within my calories for the day, still hit my macros, everything was still looking good on paper. But the way that I felt physically was like, the food, I can literally still feel the food digesting in my body. And it's just such a gross, horrible feeling. And that definitely impacted my sleep in a bad way. I don't think I was able to sleep well. And then here's the thing, right? It's like, and then you wake up the next morning, and guess what? You're not going to be craving food. You're not going to be waking up feeling hungry. You're not going to be waking up feeling energized either, because the food is still digesting. You had a poor night of sleep. And then this can also cause you to, once again, skip your breakfast, not eat throughout the day, and then be hungry super late at night, and then repeat the cycle again. So if you are considering intermittent fasting, one thing that I will tell you to do is try doing it in reverse order. Do it the opposite way of how most people recommend doing it, because at least this way you get to fuel your body first thing in the morning, right? You're nice and energized. You have a regular breakfast, regular lunch, regular dinner, and then maybe you stop eating at around 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. And now you have 2, 3, 4, 5 hours where you can go, where your food can completely digest. And then by the time your head hits the pillow, let's say you go to bed at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., all the food is fully digested, and you can go to sleep feeling super, just like food is digested, and you feel good, you feel satiated. And I guarantee you, if you've never done this before, you're going to have one of the best nights of sleep ever. And you're probably not going to be waking up in the middle of the night having to go pee either, because oftentimes if you eat a big meal right before bed, not only does your food have to digest the food, you're also more prone to peeing at night. So there's this rule called the 3-2-1 methods to sleep. I know I'm kind of going off a tangent right now, but I think this is really important. So 3 hours before you go to bed, cut out all food. Have your last meal 3 hours before bed. If you go to bed at 10 p.m., the latest you should eat is 7 p.m. Ideally 6 p.m. because you're not going to be done eating at 7 p.m. if you start eating at 7 p.m. Like, it's likely going to take you 10, 15 minutes to actually eat the food and then digest the food. So ideally you like to maybe have your dinner at 6 p.m., eat all the way up until 6:30. And then you have this 3.5 hour window where your body can just completely digest the food. 2 hours before bed, cut out all liquids. Do not drink anything. Ideally, stop drinking water with your dinner. As soon as you're done eating dinner, stop drinking water. Because if you drink a big glass of water right before bed, don't be surprised if you wake up in the middle of the night to go pee. And the reason why it's not a good thing to wake up in the middle of the night to go pee is because you're literally breaking your sleeping. Like, you are awake now, and you don't want to be doing that. You literally want to go to sleep and feel like you are being transported into the next morning. Like, that is like the most ideal way of sleeping, uninterrupted. And then 1 stands for 1 hour before bed, no blue lights, no phones, no screens, no laptops, no TVs, no nothing. Wear some blue light blocker glasses if you want, or put your brightness on orange mode if that's possible for you, or just better yet, completely just get rid of it. Do some relaxing activities, put your body in a prime state to really fall asleep, and I guarantee you're going to have the best sleep possible. So yeah, that's kind of like my small little tangent when it comes to intermittent fasting. If you want to try doing this, try doing it in reverse order, where you break your fast earlier on in the day and then you stop your feeding window earlier on in the evening to really prioritize your sleep. And I guarantee you, if you have a good night of sleep, your fat loss will be easier, your muscle growth will be easier, you're going to have more energy, you're going to feel more productive, and it just, in my opinion, in a better way of living. So that is my long answer to why I currently do not intermittent fast. I do it in kind of like this weird way where I'll wake up first thing in the morning, I'll do a workout, and then I'll break my fast as soon as I'm done with that. So once again, tends to be at around 10 a.m. Okay. Why intermittent fasting fails most people? People fail with fasting because they either tend to overeat in that feeding window, or they justify eating junk food once they are able to break their fast to, what's the word I'm looking for? To celebrate. It's like, oh, I just went through a fast. I get to celebrate now. I get to reward myself with junk food. Like, no, that is not the right mindset to have to this. It can also fail if you ignore protein. Like, a lot of people will lose a ton of weight, but then also lose a ton of muscle when they intermittent fasting. That is because it becomes increasingly more difficult to hit your protein goals as well. So especially if you're trying to gain muscle and bulk up and get stronger, intermittent fasting probably will fail you. And it's probably not a good idea, because if you have to eat 150 grams of protein, up to 200 grams of protein in a day, it just becomes very difficult if you have to do that in a short time window, right? And then lastly is if you think fasting replaces discipline, because it doesn't. Fasting doesn't fix bad habits. It just hides them until later on, right? I love this quote so much. I'll say this one more time. Fasting does not fix your bad habits. It just hides them until later on in the evening. And then they'll come all pouring out once again. So here's how I use intermittent fasting with some of our clients. So inside of the Barbarian Squad program, fasting is optional. So we ask every single one of our clients, does it reduce calories naturally? Does it improve your adherence to your diet? And does it fit within your training and recovery schedule? If the answer is yes, we use it. But if the answer is no to any of those questions, we don't. Because at the end of the day, you got to be in a calorie deficit. There's just different ways of executing that. So here's the final truth that I want you to leave with. Intermittent fasting, it is not special. It is a tool in a toolbox that you can use. It is not a solution, and it is not a shortcut. Fat loss comes from consistency and being in a calorie deficit, regardless of when you eat. So if you want help losing 20, 30, up to 50 pounds, all without sacrificing your favorite foods or spending hours in a gym as we head into the new year of 2026, what you can go ahead and do is schedule a free consultation call with me down below, where we'll essentially go over your current goals, we'll go over your current schedule, and we'll create a game plan together to help you absolutely crush your goals in the next 3 to 6 months. If that sounds good to you, the link will be in the description down below, and I'll see you all there. Peace.